Hey everyone, welcome back to this Forge College Explainer. Today we're diving deep into the on-chain mechanics of Orca Whirlpools. Look, if you've been building in Solana DeFi, you know the drill. Grasping how these underlying mechanics actually function on-chain is the absolute prerequisite to confidently building advanced DeFi automations. We aren't just going to talk high-level theory today, we are getting right under the hood.
All right, for you advanced devs out there, here's our roadmap for today. We'll cover mechanics and ticks, the reservoir mental model, liquidity math, position design, and finally, the position lifecycle. Let's get right into it.
Section 1. Mechanics and ticks. Before you can write a single line of automation code, you've got to understand the rigid framework your liquidity actually lives inside.
So, at its core, Whirlpool uses this discrete mapping system. Think of a tick as a fixed step on a logarithmic price scale, where adjacent ticks correspond to multiplicative price steps. But here's the catch, and it's a big one. Tick spacing is a configurable integer that dictates your exact boundaries. You can't just toss liquidity wherever you feel like it. Your upper and lower ticks absolutely must be exact multiples of this spacing. Get the math wrong or try to place a boundary off-grid, and the blockchain is going to flat out reject your position initialization at runtime. No exceptions. It's just the protocol's way of standardizing bands to prevent on-chain account bloat.
Moving on to Section 2. The reservoir mental model. To keep us all from drowning in the math before we even write our first script, let's visualize how your capital actually behaves.
I love this analogy. I want you to picture the overall market depth as a long canal. Your concentrated liquidity position, that's just a specific segment of this canal, and it's firmly bounded by two sluice gates. Those gates are your lower and upper ticks. The amount of liquidity, or capital, you provide determines the width and depth of your specific segment. And as the water, meaning the market price, flows back and forth through your gates, you're scooping up a tiny bit of it as sediment. That sediment represents your collected fees.
Now check out the fundamental trade-off here. If you set up a narrow segment, meaning your sluice gates are super close together, you're going to collect incredibly dense sediment, right? The water is forced through this tight area, giving you super high fee capture per unit of capital. But it's risky. A slight water level shift and your capital is totally isolated. On the flip side, a wide segment is like a massive passive basin. You get a lower yield per unit, sure, but you also don't have to actively manage those gates nearly as often.
So, this brings us to the million-dollar question. What actually happens to your on-chain assets when the market price completely exits your chosen sluice gates? Like what happens when the water drops way below your lower gate or spikes way above the upper one?
Well, the second the price exits your range, those gates slam shut and isolate your segment.
Boom! Your position instantly becomes single-sided. You're left holding 100% of just one token type. And worse, you're generating absolutely zero fees until the price magically wanders back or until your automation steps in to reinitialize a brand new range to actually follow the water.
All right, Section 3, concentrated liquidity mathematics. Let's peel back the curtain a bit and look at the actual square root-based formulas that enforce our whole reservoir analogy on-chain.
Take a look at this data. Notice how the exact same amount of capital yields wildly different impermanent loss profiles, all based entirely on where you set your boundaries. Let's say the current price is 100. A narrow range of 90 to 110 is balanced, yeah, but it's super sensitive to impermanent loss. Meanwhile, a wide range from 50 to 200 is way more passive. Your initial token ratio and how it shifts as the price moves is completely governed by how tightly you hug the current market price with those bounds.
When you're actually calculating these amounts in your code, you've got to rely on constant product formulas. Look at this equation for your base token exposure, token X. As the market price edges closer and closer to that upper bound, the math literally forces your amount of token X to plummet right towards zero.
And conversely, as the price shifts downward, your quote token balance, token Y, follows this companion formula, which is strictly capped by your lower tick. The big takeaway here, these two equations are the absolute mathematical engines under the hood. They dictate exactly what's sitting in your wallet the moment you close a position.
Okay, Section 4, designing a concrete position. Let's take all this theory and see how it builds into an actual, real-world SOL/USDC position.
So, if your SDK automation is aiming to be a smart, active manager, let's say rebalancing daily based on market conditions, you absolutely have to follow these 5 precise steps. Skip one, and you're either overtrading and burning your profits on gas, or you're undercollecting fees by sitting completely out of range.
Step 1. Choose your center and range. Imagine a moderate volatility environment with a current price of 100 USDC per SOL. A really solid starting point is setting our bounds roughly at plus or minus 12%.
So our lower sluice gate goes at 88 and the upper gate at 112. After that, we just verify that 88 and 112 snap cleanly to those allowed tick spacing grids the pool enforces. Remember, we don't want the blockchain rejecting us.
Now, step 3 is choosing your fee tier. And honestly, this is where so many automated strategies just completely fall apart. You have to perfectly match your fee tier to the expected trade frequency. Low fee tiers, like 0.03%, are built for high throughput environments. To capture enough sediment there, you need a massive, constant flow of water from retail trades crossing your bounds over and over. High tiers, like 0.3%, compensate for slower environments where you get fewer but much heavier trades. Mix these up and your returns are going to flatline.
Section 5. The position lifecycle. Once your parameters are all dialed in, it's time for your code to interact with specific state accounts chronologically.
Here's how it flows. First, your automated strategy initializes a program-derived address, a PDA, on Solana to permanently lock in those exact tick bounds and deposit your tokens. Once it's active, the position just passively accrues fees. The Whirlpool program is constantly incrementing fee accumulator variables in the background global pool state. Then, to finally settle up, your script computes the owed fees by subtracting your position's historical fee growth snapshot from the current global counters. After that, it withdraws both the fees and your underlying liquidity.
But wait, how does your bot actually know when it's time to settle and reset? To close the loop, your monitoring systems have to track 3 very specific signals. First, what percentage of your position has already converted to a single token? Second, how much time has passed since the market price last crossed through your active range? And third, and this is critical, does your current fee accrual mathematically justify the transaction cost of actually executing a rebalance? Because if the math doesn't clear, you hold. Simple as that.
Finally, our conclusion and key takeaways. We've covered a ton of ground today, so let's quickly distill down what you absolutely need to remember before you start building.
The biggest thing to remember is that ticks are your discrete on-chain levers. They translate your human strategic intent into hard, enforceable protocol parameters. The success of your automation logic totally depends on matching the market's expected volatility to the correct spacing, the right range width, and the appropriate fee tier. Yes, narrow ranges can absolutely supercharge your yield, but only if your bot has the discipline to rebalance without bleeding all your capital to gas fees.
Remember the golden rule. When your automation overtrades, you collect dust instead of sediment. And that brings up a really critical question to leave you with. If your code is blindly following tight parameters, is your bot actually managing risk, or is it just systematically draining your capital and transaction fees? Definitely chew on that as you design your constraints. Are you ready to translate these Whirlpool primitives into dynamic DLMM abstractions? If so, head over to forge.college for our next explainer where we master Meteora SDK integration. Until then, keep those sluice gates optimized.